David Sams, and this is CIA Contagious Influencers of America from the producers of Keep the Faith. We have a very special episode of CIA for you today. I had a special guest here at the homestead. I asked him to come over because I wanted him to spend some time with me to go under the hood as to how these miracles happen, how these movies get made, and how they get into theaters. I'm talking about theaters that, at one time they were controlled by Hollywood, but the pandemic kind of changed all of that. And there's one particular company that seems to have found the secret sauce on getting projects into theaters, projects that Hollywood really doesn't want to touch. And this particular movie that we're going to talk about is called Sound of Freedom. It hits theaters July the 4th. There's some previews on July 3rd, but you'll probably recall a couple of days ago, I had Jim Caviezel on, and he's the star of this movie. And I also had the real life hero that he plays in the movie. That's Tim Ballard. Now this movie is it's about a subject matter that we don't like to talk a lot about. We don't even like to sort of admit that it's going on right here in the United States of America, and that is child sex trafficking. You know, there's something like 2 million kids right now every year that are being trafficked all over the world, including right here in the United States. And so in any event, Neal Harmon is the CEO of Angel Studios. He and his brothers, they run this studio, and these guys have a heck of a team. And the way that they decide to green light a picture or pick up a picture is so different than the rest of movie makers out there. And he's going to reveal the secret sauce today. I literally had him go under the hood and give us sort of a little masterclass as to how this all happens. So Sound of Freedom hits theaters on July the 4th. I really need you to go out there and buy tickets, folks. We're trying to get 2 million tickets sold during leading up to July 4th and July 4th week. And why 2 million? Well, because there are 2 million kids being trafficked every year. So we're really trying to bring special attention to that and to the cause. So we're going to get right to my interview in just a second. I want to thank Angel Studios and everything that they do. I'm going to thank Neal for he's going to go into the story. You know, a few years ago, they were sued. They were sued by Disney. Okay? Imagine being sued by the 800-pound gorilla and having to go through California courts. He's going to talk a little bit about that, but then he's going to show how God turned all that around, and how the company pivoted, and how they have become what they are today. Theater owners love these guys; they can't get enough, but they're very cautious. They're very particular as to what they get behind and put into theaters. So he's going to go into that. He's going to go into under the hood and give you a master class. And for that reason, I'm just going to ask our folks just to keep the camera directly on him the entire time. This is not about me. You know what I look like, but I'm just going to keep the camera right on Neal, and there's a reason for that. I want you to see his brilliance and how his mind works, for example, when I'm asking these questions. So it's just going to be a one-on-one with you and Neal in that room. But first, let's roll a new trailer that he just provided to the film Sound of Freedom.
How'd that make you feel? Giving a child his freedom.
Felt good.
You have been at this for 12 years.
My country, 'tis of thee.
Why are you doing it?
Sweet land of liberty.
Because God's children are not for sale. It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen.
We're Homeland Security. You know we can't go off rescuing Honduran kids in Colombia.
This job tears you to pieces.
And where my fathers died.
This is my one chance to put those pieces back together.
Land of the Pilgrim's
And yet somehow you have failed to bring me one real-world lead.
It's over, Tim. Close up and come back home.
So you quit your job and you go and rescue those kids.
South of that river is all rebel territory. No one goes in.
What if this was your daughter?
So, she's gone.
Hear that? That's the sound of freedom.
Sound of Freedom is one of those films that can legitimately change this world. So we want to ignite a fire in audiences and open their eyes to the dark reality of millions of children that need our help. Let's make this film a historic event and the start, the end of child trafficking. Theaters across this country are already selling out. Pre-order your tickets today, and you can send the message that God's children are no longer for sale.
Tell me the story of Sound of Freedom. I mean, here's a movie. As I understand it, nobody wanted to touch it. It was made, 5 years ago or something?
They started it 8 years ago. And it was,
8 years ago?
Yeah, and then it was finished about 4 or 5.
Yeah, and nobody would touch it.
Yeah, I mean, it went through a lot of different hands in terms of distribution rights. Fox, then Disney acquired Fox, and Disney said, we can't release this film. And then it went through some other hands and COVID, and yeah.
Well, all I can tell you is that I lived in Hollywood for almost 30 years, and Hollywood has a lot to hide. So maybe that had something to do with it.
You know, I've never lived in Hollywood, so I wouldn't know.
Good for you. Don't move. So what gave you the incentive to pick it up? Tell me the story.
So October of last year, well, first off, our company's been around since late 2013. And interestingly, the founder of, or the gentleman who this story is about quit his job to save children at the exact same time.
You're talking about Tim Ballard.
Tim Ballard, yes. So he quit his job in late 2020 or 2013, 10 years ago. And we started our company 10 years ago. And you and I have discussed before that we went through a major legal battle with Disney and survived it.
Right.
But during that battle, the judges in California treated us really poorly. And they gave us an injunction in late 2016. And the day after, we turned our company Christmas party into an announcement where we were going to start a studio. We're like, if the studios won't play ball with us, if they won't help families be able to experience these stories the way families want to, then we're just going to compete directly with them. So we announced a studio, and there were 2 projects that we announced at that event. One was Dry Bar Comedy, which now gets over 1 billion views a year. And then the second one was the story of Tim Ballard. But at the time, it was a documentary called The Abolitionists. Well, right after that, like the rights around The Abolitionists got, something happened with them to where we weren't able to release it. It kind of fell off the radar. We started The Chosen with Dallas Jenkins instead, and a number of other projects. And then October of last year, I was speaking at the World Congress of Families, and Eduardo Verástegui, the producer of Sound of Freedom, was there on the stage with me in front of a big group of people. We got to know each other's heart. We met each other and started to build a relationship of trust. Fast forward a few months, and I went to the set of The Chosen in Goshen, Utah. And it was the only day that I went to that set for the entire season. And I only went for 2 hours. And who was on the set? Tim Ballard. Like Jonathan Rumi had invited Tim Ballard to the set. And so we reconnected. It had been years since we'd seen each other. And Tim said, I think the rights to the film that tells my story might be becoming available, Neal. And I said, that'd be awesome. I mean, if that's the case, let's chat. And sure enough, he called later and said, yeah, they're available. And we immediately submitted Sound of Freedom to the Angel Guild. The Angel Guild, if you'll remember, are the group of people who have previously invested in our projects, and they get to decide whether or not any story gets published on Angel.
And just to clarify, the Angel Guild are individuals, are people from all over the country.
That's all over the world.
These aren't, this isn't a group of 20 guys with money.
It's over 100,000 people.
Okay.
And these people...
And anybody can become a member.
Anybody can become a member if they, subscribe if they're a subscriber, or two, if they invest in any of the Angel projects, then that gives them a guild membership for a time. So the guild members are the ones who get to decide what's next. They decide whether the stories amplify light and whether they're really well made. And the resounding answer of the guild was yes. We need to do Sound of Freedom. In fact, we got a response from the guild within 24 hours. We had 1,000 people watch it, and they said yes. And we met on a Thursday. This was about 100 days ago. We met on a Thursday, and by Tuesday, we signed a deal with Eduardo. And I think it had to happen that way. Like Eduardo and I had to meet. The rights, the way that they went down, everything about it just felt like there were miracles happening, and that it was like this was a job for the people to take on, and that's what we see. The way we see Angel, like Angel Studios, is named after the angel investors, the Angel Guild members. These are the people who make this all possible, and for them, when Fox didn't distribute it, and then Disney rejected it, and then some other highly connected people in the industry didn't release it. What better way for this film to be released than by the people themselves, the angels? And so it's really exciting.
Well, it also says something about the blessing of patience, because, think about it. 10 years ago, if you would have done this, first of all, you didn't have the experience you have now. Second of all, you didn't have the track record. Right. Yes. And you didn't have the access to the theaters, et cetera, that you have now.
David, that is a really good point, and it brings back a memory that right around those same times in our early days as a company, immediately after that lawsuit, we tried to launch a movie into theaters. It was called Tim Timmerman, Hope of America. And we launched this movie back in 2016 or 2017. And just on a local basis, as a test run, and boy, it did not go well. Like not from our perspective, it didn't go well because we didn't understand the theatrical business. And so you make a really good point. We had some growing up to do as a company.
Sure.
And that's a good point.
And you did it in 5 or 6 years, so it's not like you took 50 years to figure it out.
Well, those 5 or 6 years feel like 50, David. Yeah. I had a lot more hair then.
So tell me, for those out there, and I know there are people watching this who have a film that they've shot.
Okay.
And you probably see these all the time, or they come across your desk now. Can you help me get out there, get into theaters? Tell me what you're looking for, and tell me what the process is. I understand that the Angel Guild, 1,000 or plus people have to give the green light, so to speak.
Yep.
But other than that, Just to get to that point, what do people that have a film, a project, a TV pilot, whatever it may be, what do they have to do to get your attention?
It's best to just tell you quickly the Angel brand story. Like if you see the Angel logo, the Angel Studios logo, the backdrop are the robes of the Statue of Liberty, and the color of the logo is the copper, and then the backdrop is oxidized copper. The Statue of Liberty was the very first crowd-funded project in our nation's history, and maybe in history altogether. And Frederick Bartholdi, the way he tried to get people to help him build that statue, like the governments and such, and they wouldn't. And so he scrounged together enough money to build a torch. He took that torch around France, raised money. Then he took it over to the U.S., raised money. And between the French and the American people and a decade of work, he raised the equivalent of like $14 million to build the Statue of Liberty. And so at Angel Studios, that's a metaphor for what we're trying to achieve here, which is the filmmaker needs to bring their torch. It's a 5-minute plus short film or piece of storytelling that helps people catch the vision for what the filmmaker wants to create. In the case of Dallas Jenkins, that was The Shepherd. In the case of Chris Wall from Wingfeather Saga, that was a little animated episode. Mm-hmm. In the case of Tuttle Twins, it was just an animatic with acting voices. So somebody needs a torch that helps all the angels understand, this is what I stand for, this is what I'm about, this is the quality of what I'm going to make. And then the angels are able to get behind it. So that's the most important thing, is that a filmmaker puts in the effort, and it's not easy to make a torch, but that's what it requires. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we get about over 60 submissions a week right now.
A week.
And the good thing is, and not all of them qualify. Some people will try to send in sizzles, or they'll try to send in trailers, and those aren't accepted. It needs to be a piece of narrative storytelling to help people get the gist of it. But the Angel Guild will give good feedback. There's a report and a score that everybody can see and understand, and there are people who have, they'll iterate on it to get their project right.
So you look at film, you look at television, mm-hmm. Anything else?
We've actually looked at screen, like Broadway style play.
Broadway, wow.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a little dangerous.
We haven't done one, but there are all kinds of storytelling projects are coming to us.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
that really is. So let's talk about Sound of Freedom. You have a big challenge, a big goal, and that's the $2 million for $2 million. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and what are you trying to achieve?
So like I said, we signed the agreement to do the distribution of this like 3 months ago, just a little over 3 months ago. And when we did and started to learn about this problem, we learned that there will be over 2 million children that will be trafficked this year. And the magnitude of that problem is hard to comprehend. And so we thought that it'd be fitting to set a goal for the opening week, that we represent those children. That is a lot of people, mm-hmm. And it helps people to understand the problem, and also builds awareness around the problem. I heard an interview on your show recently with Tim Ballard, mm-hmm. who the story's about, and he describes how Uncle Tom's Cabin in the 19th century really changed the course of events, mm-hmm. because it helped create awareness for people who weren't close enough to slavery to understand it. and to actually take a position on it. And this is a similar problem today where people, they hear about it. They hear things in the news. You know, there's stuff going on, children disappearing on the border. There's pedophiles that are being, you know, apprehended from time to time. They hear just little intimations of this. There are big stories coming out around this topic, but people are just like, it's arm's length. They don't understand it, and it's kind of an area where it's so uncomfortable to think about it that you don't even really want to dive into it.
Yeah, and we want to think that this only happens in third world countries.
Right.
I mean, I was told last week by a gentleman right here in Williamson County, Tennessee, that this is the #1 county for trafficking in Tennessee. And it's because there's so much money here. And this gentleman, who has worked off and on with Tim, by the way, tells me that I would be shocked to know some of the people that have been involved.
That's sickening.
Because there's just so much money here to play with. I guess it's like what happens around the Super Bowl, where all these girls and guys get trafficked in for a big event like that. I mean, I heard some ridiculous number, like it was like 30,000 or something for around a big game like that.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's a systemic problem, right? That the trafficking are the bad fruits of lots and lots of poor decisions that preceded it, and on societal decisions, individual decisions, where people are objectifying another human being, and for their own pleasure, and so the awareness is so important, and the awareness is so hard to build because it's such a difficult topic. That's what's beautiful about this film. Alejandro Monteverde has crafted a masterpiece, in my opinion, one that looks at the problem in a way that you come away with hope, but also a full sense of the gravity of the problem simultaneously, and while being entertained. So I'm just so grateful for what these guys have built, and I'm grateful that the angel community has grown enough that we can be the ones to launch this film and send a message to the entire world that it's time to put a stop to this.
The one thing I really appreciated about the film was it's done in such good taste. I mean, I could see the Hollywood version. It would have all kinds of gratuitous sex scenes and just, very exploitive scenes.
Yes.
And there wasn't one of those in the film. I mean,
there were times when I was on the edge of my seat, like, where are we going? And yet, to your point, just such propriety in handling that line and not stepping into the not voyeuristically stepping into that world, but more just being aware of it just enough to know that the problem's there and how real it is, but staying away from voyeurism.
So let's talk about the relationship with the theaters, because you have an interesting, I guess it started with The Chosen, the success that you had with that by putting a couple episodes of The Chosen up. And we've talked about that before. But like with this particular project, how many theaters, I mean, do you go in and do you have a minimum number that you go after and then you just build on that as demand increases with tickets? How does that work? Because I seem to wake up and it's like, we've added 500 theaters. I'm like, who can do that? So how does that happen?
Well, like I said, we need to thank the angels for making all of this possible. But the theatrical business is very, like, so many businesses have become completely digital, right? If you want to buy an ad on Facebook or Twitter, you don't talk to a person. You just interface with technology and you buy ads, you put in your credit card, etc. Theaters don't work this way. You have to have people talk to the theaters. There are buyers that at each of the big theaters, and then there are sub buyers, and then there's the independents, and the theater is just this incredibly fascinating industry, and they're great partners, to be honest. Like AMC, they're based out of Knoxville. I don't know if you knew that, but and then or did I get that wrong? AMC, I might get that wrong. So Cinemark is Texas. AMC, I can't remember if it's AMC or Regal that's right here in Knoxville. Do you know?
No.
Anyway, and then the last one is of the big three, I think, is in Georgia. Anyway, or St. Louis, but they're all like middle America type businesses, and it was so fun because when our team went to CinemaCon, all the big studios were whining and dining in the theaters and trying to get, even famous actors were there trying to get the best positioning in the theaters. And we showed up in our Angel shirts, our Angel Studios shirts, and people would stop us all through the theaters, or, and stop us right and left, and be like, they pull out their cross. We're on your side. There'd be these references. We're cheering for you. We love what you're doing and everything. And we realized when we went there that the theaters have to make money, right? They went through a terribly difficult time in COVID, where they were all shut down. A lot of them, especially the independents, had to pick up a lot of debt. Regal had to file bankruptcy.
And the studio started streaming everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the studio stabbed them all in the back. And at least, there's two sides to every story. But we looked at these guys and we're just like, these are great partners. And the second thing that we learned with the theaters is that filmmakers, they could, being on Netflix, being on Apple TV Plus, they're honored to do that.
Yeah.
Being on the silver screen.
But it's TV.
Yeah. Being on the silver screen is next level. And so it was like, when we did His Only Son, it was like the entire industry suddenly became aware of Angel Studios when we did that movie. Even though it didn't, it was a great experience, great success. We got number 3 in the box office the first week.
Well, I think we talked right before that, right? Wasn't it right before that we talked? His Only Son?
Yeah. It was as we were getting ready for that.
So that was produced for $250,000 by this guy, and how much did it make?
It made almost $13 million.
Almost $13 million. So you did okay with that, and the theaters sold a lot of popcorn.
They sold a lot of popcorn, and it was the number 3 film in the box office opening week. So they were really pleased, and they're like, "How did you do that for as little money as you had?" And
who was the name of the filmmaker?
His name's David Helling.
I love watching the credits. Wardrobe by David, directed by David, produced by David, special effects by David.
Costume sewed by David.
And then he comes on afterwards and does his pitch, I guess, for the next project, right?
Yeah, that's
Which
right.
was very effective.
Yes.
It was really cool where you scrolled or rolled all the, I guess, angels or people that gave to the project.
Yeah.
It was very, very
They invested.
Cool. Invested.
They've all gotten their return now.
Wow.
So
if I would have put up $1,000 for something like that, what would be my return?
You would have gotten $1,200 within. It took like 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I could say it was my movie.
That's right. Not could. It is. Like you are part of the story, and your name would be in the credits. And
so anybody can do that right now for Sound of Freedom.
No, so it's closed.
That's
for Sound
closed.
of Freedom.
Okay.
Yeah. So the 5 million, we did 5 million with the audience. And
so that's where you cap it.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that for SEC reasons?
For SEC reasons.
Okay.
Yeah. So there will be more marketing funds that are invested in Sound of Freedom. It's a much bigger project. But the crowd part of it is 5 million. And there were over 7,000 people who invested in the crowd part.
So when you do something like that and you cap it at 5 million to get it in the theaters, is that for the P&A?
Yes.
Basically?
It's P&A.
Can you go raise another $5 million to put it on another platform
So
for another reason?
So the crowdfunding regulations allow for $5 million per entity per year.
Okay.
So Sound of Freedom LLC can only, or Angel Studios Inc. can only raise, on this crowdfunding regulation, $5 million a year.
So you just set up a different corporation per project?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
okay.
what we do. So
I'm just trying to figure out how to get on it. I'm just figuring out how to.
Yeah, The Chosen did its own crowdfund. Wingfeather did its own crowdfund.
Gotcha.
Tuttle Twins did its own crowdfund. Right now, Truth and Conviction and the German King are doing their own crowdfunds, and so they're separate entities.
Gotcha. So what are the future projects you're working on now, since we last talked?
Yeah, so we are planning a release of The Shift in December of this year. We are toying around the idea. I better not say, but there might be an October release that we're excited about a film called After Death. But I don't know what the final decision is on that.
Okay.
And then next year, on International Women's Day, we're releasing a film called Cabrini. It's the story of Mother Cabrini. And then in 2025, we're releasing a major animated musical called David. And
we've talked about that.
There'll be other films in between, but those are the ones that are.
And what about streaming or television? Are you doing anything? Is that?
Yeah. Right now, we're crowdfunding for Truth and Conviction, which is a 4-part miniseries, and for the German King, and those are both scheduled to go into production this year.
So the theaters, they've got to be excited that there's this new way to get projects onto their screens with immediate support. I mean, this is not like, oh, this is a great idea. Let's get the guys in the ivory tower to sign off on it and get some big star attached and then roll the dice, which is what they're accustomed to, basically.
Yeah.
And that game is completely changing. But they've got to be really excited knowing that they're going to put something out there that immediately, day one, is going to have several 100,000 people show up.
That's right. Yes. And that's the reason that the theaters are... So the theaters need two things. Like, they love what Angel Studios stands for, which stories that amplify light. Stories that are true, honest, just, noble, authentic, admirable, lovely, and excellent. That's our North Star. They love that. But they got to feed their families. They got to pay the bills. They got to pay off all those debts from COVID, and they're great partners. So we got to make them money, and so the films that we release in theaters need to hit, and we have a system for doing that, and it worked on His Only Son, and we 5x'd what we did with His Only Son in terms of plans and everything for Sound of Freedom, and so far the numbers are 5xing for us. So this is a good sign that this is scaling up. It's going to turn into just a slate of opportunities for the exhibitors. It's an opportunity for the exhibitors. It's an opportunity for audiences and for great storytelling.
So what is the big vision? Where do you see this going? What are you and your brothers talking about as far as 5 years from now?
Yeah. So the long-term goal for us, because I would say the long-term goal is first and foremost, is that there's a sustainable economic model for storytelling, for stories that amplify light, for our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. Like, when we're gone, that there's a sustainable economic model that has been built. That's outside of the control of the traditional gatekeepers. And second thing is that we don't want to do a repeat of what we feel like happened with Disney. Like, our mom, we grew up hearing the stories of Roy and Walt Disney as great American entrepreneurs, and then we got sued by that company and have we don't want to celebrate anyone's failures, but the company became a different company after the founders were gone. And so our second goal is
you're talking about Disney.
Yeah, Disney. Our second goal with Angel Studios is that we create a company that's not only economically sustainable for great storytelling, but then also won't lose its bearing. And that's why we're putting the green lighting decisions in the hands of the people and the angel investors. And that's why we have this North Star of stories that amplify light.
And just to clarify for those watching, the reason you got sued had nothing to do with what you're doing now.
No,
right?
Nothing.
Just give us the 60-second version of what you tried to do and what they didn't like about it.
Yeah. So in 60 seconds, in 2013, we all had young children, and we wanted to share great stories with them. And specifically, the first story was Cinderella Man. I wanted to teach the principle of honesty to my 9-year-old son without him repeating all the bad language to his younger sisters. So I developed a technology that would, when somebody would curse or say a bad word that he could share with his sister, it would just mute the voice track. So you didn't hear it. And you could experience the whole story without hearing that word, etc. That was the technology. And when we decided to start a company, we said, if we build this technology, we can attract an audience of like-minded families, and we'll be able to eventually distribute stories and create stories better for them than Hollywood can. That was the original vision.
So essentially, you were taking out the minute or 2 or 3 minutes it took it from an R or a PG-13 or whatever it may be to a general audience kind of a thing.
Yeah.
What I don't understand about that whole thing, I was in broadcast TV forever. Excuse me. And of course you'd edit out those things. We couldn't put those words on broadcast TV. We'd get, fined by the FCC. So what made your situation any different?
Well, you had the benefit of the FCC and the power of government to force the studio's hand.
Okay.
But the family doesn't have that, right? The family doesn't have the ability to just force the studio's hand, except there was something called the Family Movie Act that was passed, and we based our company off that law. But Disney said we got it wrong, and the California courts said we got it wrong. But we were trying to take that Family Movie Act and allow you to skip and mute content in your own home on streaming. Mm-hmm. And the way we were doing it, they said was copyright infringement. And that's the reason they sued us.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, look how it turned out. you pivoted, and it's so much better now, right?
Well, we pivoted. What we did was we accelerated our original goal. Our original goal was to collect an audience around this, and then to better, like the end game is not to skip over or put a Band-Aid on something that's
right,
not necessarily great storytelling. Mm-hmm. That there's so much cynicism and darkness in today's storytelling that you go put Band-Aids on it and you don't fix anything. The end goal is to find the very best stories and amplify them rather than skipping over those. But when Disney sued us, they forced our hand to switch into the other business far earlier than we ever would have dreamed. Like we had planned to wait until we got to 1 million paying customers before we tried the distribution business, and we made it to the month that we got shut down. I think we had 188,000 people pay us for filtering movies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Neal, thank you for stopping by the homestead. You're my hero, man. Thank you for doing what you're doing and carrying that torch for all of us. And thank you for involving all of us in these opportunities. That's amazing. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to get involved. And where can they find out more about Angel Studios?
Angel.com.
That domain must have cost you something.
Yeah, it did. and please get a ticket. The week of July 4th, the theaters need to know that the people want this film in the theaters, and the week of July 4th is the most competitive time of the year for the theaters, and so the people need to show up.
I saw all these huge films coming out in July. Fortunately, I think most of them start hitting the week after that, or right? So I think
we've got Indiana Jones the week before.
Oh, okay. So that's your big competition.
Well, we thought there was going to be big competition with Elemental and with Flash, but both of those have not panned out well. And so
as far as pre-sales,
Elemental's out now.
Oh, okay.
Elemental had the lowest opening weekend in Pixar's history.
Really?
Yeah. They did barely 30 million.
So how are you in? Are they pre-selling Indiana Jones?
Yes.
So how do you measure up?
We are outselling Indiana. Like if in any theater where it's both Sound of Freedom and Indiana Jones, we're outselling Indiana Jones by about 25%.
Fantastic. That's got to make you feel good.
We need it. We need it.
Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much, David, for having us on.
And thank you, Neal. Neal Harmon's been my guest today. Thanks for stopping by the homestead here. Boy, what a masterclass we all just got, right? Told you. This has been CIA Contagious Influencers of America, the podcast from the producers of Keep the Faith. I highly encourage you to get your tickets to Sound of Freedom, which hits theaters in just a few days, July the 4th. And you can order your tickets or get your tickets online at angel.com/tickets. Or, of course, you can get them at the box office. But I'm telling you, folks, this movie is selling out all across the country. It's just amazing cause. We're trying to move 2 million tickets the first week that it's in theaters because of those 2 million kids who are being trafficked all over the world every year. So please do support this movie. It's an action thriller. It's a true life story of Tim Ballard and his guys that go rescue these kids from all across the world. So you're going to really get something out of this picture. Please do consider taking your teens, because there's a lot of messages that need to be shared with our teens and young people right here in this film. So it's called Sound of Freedom, hits theaters on July the 4th. This has been CIA Contagious Influencers of America from the producers of Keep the Faith. And you can check out all of our great episodes at contagiousnfluencers.com, or of course check out our radio show website at KeepTheFaith.com, where there are all kinds of great things to listen to really that will uplift you and give you hope. So that's at KeepTheFaith.com. And remember this week to go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living in black and white. I'll see you next time.